Good morning, everyone. We have a forum. I'd like to start. Please take your seat, everyone. So, I'll just let them take their seats quickly, please. Much better this morning than I did the other mornings, everyone, especially late night last night for the 76 or 75 who were here till 10 o'clock last night. So thank you. It will not have to you that we're a little bit behind the working program. I would like to catch up as we can, so that will mean it will be a tough day today. I will be managing my list quite closely, and I will be requesting that you keep your interventions focused and short. I'm not going to set a time limit. I do have a facility to put a timer behind me, which will obviously be quite intimidating. I don't think we're there yet. I did see parties really trying last night to keep their interventions short, and I really appreciate it. But I will ask you today, again, to make efforts. I know many of you have prepared statements. I understand and I appreciate that. I have been in the same place as you. But I would ask you, if you can, think about editing your prepared statements down, and if you possibly can, keep them close to 2 minutes and very much focused on the matter at hand. Observers, I would ask the same of you. It is my intention, and I think I've demonstrated this, to make sure that as many parties and observers can speak on as many items as possible, but we really do need to keep to time. It is my intention to try and catch up as much of today's program as possible, and one of the reasons for that is so that I can make sure that we're not crossing over too much with the topics that are being discussed next door. So with that, I would like to start with CoP19 document 66.6. The report on the Elephant Trade Information System, the ETIS. This document has been prepared by the Secretariat, so I'll ask the Secretariat to introduce it. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document 66.6, submitted by the Secretariat, presents in Annex 1 a comprehensive analysis of the ETIS data carried out by traffic. Data analysis carried out by traffic. The Secretariat's introductory remarks focus on Annex 1, and more specifically the trend in cluster analysis and the identification of countries requiring attention under the NIAP process based on ETIS data. Based on the extent to which they are affected by illegal trade in ivory, countries are categorized as Category A, B, and C, as defined in the guidelines to the National Ivory Action Plan process in Annex 3 of Resolution Conference 1010, Rev CoP18. Summaries of data reported to ETIS showed that fewer records were reported in 2020, with the number of seizures and total weight reported being similar to 2008 levels. And in 2019, the third highest weight of ivory seizures for the period 2008 to 2020 was reported to ETIS, including 3 record-setting seizures, each totaling 7.5 tons or more. The trend analysis included in Annex 1 was also reported to Standing Committee 74 and included ETIS data spanning 2008 to 2020, comprised of 16,818 ETIS records from 68 countries. The trend analysis results showed that since the peak in illegal ivory trade in 2014 to 2015, there appears to have been an overall decreasing trend in illegal ivory trade activity through to 2020, with 2020 estimates comparable to the baseline levels of 2008. However, possible impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on overall illegal wildlife trade in 2020 make it very difficult to determine the extent of real increase in illegal trade related to control actions taken by parties and law enforcement agencies. A trend analysis omitting data from 2020 due to low reporting possibly resulting from the impacts of COVID-19 showed increasing trends up to a peak in 2019 for small and medium raw ivory classes. Future analysis of post-pandemic ETIS data will provide an indication of the direction and sustainability of these trends. As in previous ETIS reports to CITES COPs, a cluster analysis was conducted based on the ETIS data to identify parties with similar trade characteristics to help inform the process of identifying countries or territories that are most prominently implicated in the illegal ivory trade. This analysis was based on data from 2018 to 2020, covering the period since the last cluster analysis was presented at COP18. The analysis included 11 variables and 4 general groupings: seizure in, seizure out, weight in, and weight out, which were assessed for 65 countries or territories. Trade characteristics for the resulting cluster are presented in the report. Annex 1 describes the characterization of countries based on the interpretation of the ETIS analysis data. Countries were included in category A and B based on their higher overall illegal trade activity within the country, as well as higher large-scale illegal trade activities that occurred in the country undetected, such as large seizures in which a country was implicated as a country of origin, export, re-export, transport, or destination in the illegal trade chain. Differentiation between category A and B was based on illegal trade volume, or weight seized, and the reported role of the country in the illegal trade chain. As has been done in previous COP reports, supportive information from subsidiary data maintained in the ETIS database provided context to further differentiate countries into categories A and B. This included country rankings on the Corruption Perceptions Index, a measure of the country's law enforcement efforts based on reported ETIS data, and published literature, including the new Index of Global Organized Crime. Countries that presented new illegal trade dynamics are mentioned as Category C, with additional information used to justify the selection. The last section of the report in Annex 1 includes information relating to the ETIS data submission timeline and the implications associated with proposed amendments to the final deadline for the submission of ETIS data as contained in document CoP19-21. The Secretariat would like to draw the parties' attention to the tentative budget required to implement ETIS contained in Annex 4 to the document. The Secretariat and Traffic are grateful for the funding from the European Union through the Mikes Plus project, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's African Elephant Conservation Fund, the governments of Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands, and Worldwide Fund for Nature. In conclusion, Chair, the Conference of the Parties is requested to note this report.
Thank you, Secretariat. Before I open the floor to parties, just note that this is the ETIS report. Later on this morning, I hope, later this morning, we will deal with the review of ETIS, the document on the review of ETIS, so I would ask you to keep your comments specific to this report if you can, and as brief as possible. So parties, you have the floor. I see the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Merci Madame la Présidente de la parole. J'ai suivi avec intérêt ce rapport d'ETIS qui vient de nous être présenté par le secrétariat. J'aimerais remercier le secrétariat pour ces informations importantes qui sont contenues dans ce document. J'aimerais exprimer la désapprobation de mon pays à prendre acte de ce rapport parce que la catégorisation de mon pays telle qu'elle est faite n'est pas basée sur les données objectives. Sur les données objectives, les données qui continuent à catégoriser mon pays, la République démocratique du Congo, comme un pays de la catégorie A, comme c'est proposé dans ces documents, ça dure un pays de la catégorie A signifie un pays qui ne fournit pas d'efforts, de lutte contre la corruption, de lutte contre le braconnage. Je conteste cette catégorisation. Pourquoi? Parce que, au nom de mon président de la République, Son Excellence Félix Antoine Tshisekedi, qui a mis en place une politique de lutte contre la corruption qui fait preuve dans mon pays. Et cette politique de lutte contre la corruption est sans précédent, qui fait qu'aujourd'hui, il n'y a personne qui est intouchable en République démocratique du Congo. La justice fait son travail. Et c'est plus qu'avant que même le braconnier, les auteurs des actes de braconnage sont punis. Il y a des saisies des ivoires qui sont effectuées sans précédent. Ici, j'interviens, c'est pour dire que la catégorisation ne tient pas compte des informations scientifiques, des échantillons, de toutes ces saisies systématiques qui ont été analysées au niveau des États-Unis, qui ont démontré que la plupart d'ivoires qui provenaient, qu'on déclarait venir de la RDC, ne venaient pas de mon pays. Donc mon pays est plutôt victime, un pays de transit. Et aussi, j'aimerais souligner l'activité des groupes armés au niveau de mon pays, parce que les groupes armés qui sont connus constituent une grande atteinte aux espèces sauvages, parce que le pays est victime de ces richesses occupées par des terroristes qui se mettent à battre non pas seulement les personnes humaines, mais aussi les espèces. Et je crois que notre convention devait plutôt aussi prendre le courage de condamner les groupes armés qui se mettent à porter atteinte à la faune, aux espèces sauvages et même à la flore sauvage. Voilà pourquoi j'aimerais dire ici que mon pays, c'est un pays de transit, devait plutôt changer de catégorie. Il y a d'autres pays de transit qui ne sont pas catégorisés de la sorte. Il y a 2 rapports qui ont été faits à l'Université de Washington sur les saisies. C'est des plus grandes saisies enregistrées au niveau de la RDC qui démontraient que les ivoires provenaient plutôt dans la sous-région, ça ne venait pas plutôt de la République démocratique du Congo. Donc c'est pour cela que j'interviens au nom de mon président et au nom de mon gouvernement pour contester cette catégorie qui n'est plus d'actualité. Je comprends que c'est une routine qui a toujours été faite depuis plusieurs conférences de partis, comme s'il existait un complot contre la République démocratique du Congo. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, DRC. Your objections are noted. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate the efforts of Secretariat in preparing this report. We also take the note of the reports shared with us. India had improved upon the interface with the efforts of ETIS and would like to take on record that we have provided the remaining data which had been asked by the ETIS. So, as it has been mentioned in cluster 6, it would be better if the data submitted by the country should also be taken on record. Thank you very much.
Thank you, India. Just noting observers, I'm not taking you yet. If you wouldn't mind just letting me take parties. It does confuse my list if I have observers. I still have observers on my list. The floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this is the first time we are taking the floor, we would like to congratulate Madam Chair for your successful election. We would also like to thank the government of Panama for the warm welcome and excellent hosting of this conference. Singapore would like to thank the CITES Secretariat for preparing the report. The report mentioned Dr. Sam Wozel's study on elephant genotypes revealed the size and connectivity of transnational ivory traffickers. Singapore's Center for Wildlife Forensics, in collaboration with Professor Samuel Wozel from the University of Washington, published this study in Nature Human Behavior, which identified transnational ivory trafficking networks in Africa. The study looked at the involvement of transnational criminal organizations in the illegal trade in ivory and the importance of wildlife forensics in uncovering these criminal networks. Previous forensic DNA testing work by Dr. Wozel led to identifying the geographical origin of the elephant ivory tusks seized globally, which allowed enforcement authorities in source countries to target their enforcement efforts at poaching hotspots. These results also link multiple large ivory shipments to one another by genetically identifying tusks from the same elephant exported in separate shipments. This provided important insights on the movement of ivory within the supply chain from the poacher, collector, and consolidator for shipments. The study showed that by using DNA analysis, connections between seizures can be made by combining geographical assignment and genetic matching. This information can enhance investigation into transnational criminal organization networks by enforcement authorities. This also exemplifies the importance of collecting samples from seizure, as it can provide invaluable information. We strongly urge and welcome parties to reach out to us for any potential collaboration to analyze ivory specimens seized to contribute to a deeper and better understanding of the illegal trade in ivory. This is because ultimately no one member state alone can address the issues surrounding the illegal trade in ivory. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Singapore. Uganda, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Uganda takes note of this report provided by the Secretariat and Traffic in document 66.6 that has been submitted in line with the reporting requirements under the resolution Conf 1010 Rev CoP19. Madam Chair, Uganda has been regularly submitting seizure data to ETIS, and we are concerned that there are still a number of parties that have not been submitting this seizure data to ETIS for better analysis to provide a more useful report. Illegal ivory trade is still a big issue of concern to us, and we need not lower our guard in the fight against this illegal trade that is highly organized and involves transnational criminal networks. Madam Chair, Uganda, having been a Category A country before, has had an experience, and sometimes it's not a bad thing to be in Category A because it helps you to improve your enforcement. And I would like to say that Uganda has done a lot to improve on our enforcement against illegal ivory trade. So we urge those countries that have been identified and categorized as Category A and Category B not to really worry so much, but to put more effort in fighting this illicit trade. Otherwise, Chair, we take note of the ETIS report and we submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Uganda. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States notes the report's assessments of the low level of illegal trade reported in 2020 could be a direct result of the COVID pandemic and not indicative of the current and future trends. Excluding 2020 from the trend analysis resulted in an increase rather than a decreased trend for raw ivory less than 100 kilograms and work ivory less than 10 kilograms. Again, the United States does not support moving the deadline for parties submitting ETIS reports from March 31st to October 31st, as this would result in larger potential time lags between data reporting by the parties and the data analysis presented in the ETIS to the Standing Committee and the Conference of the Parties. As stated in the document, traffic found that moving the deadline back to October 31st would result in a lag time for ETIS reports for up to 4 years, 1 year longer than can occur under the March 31st deadline. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. I will take a few more parties. I'm aware that this is just a report for noting, but I do want to hear some of your views. So I will take Vietnam, followed by Gabon. Vietnam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is the first time Vietnam takes the floor. We would like to send our sincere gratitude to the people and the government of Panama for their warm welcome and hospitality and their excellent meeting facilities. We also would like to thank the Secretariat for their significant efforts in organizing this important conference, and also would like to congratulate you for the selection as the chair of this committee. We thank the Secretariat for developing a comprehensive report on ITIS. Vietnam basically agrees with the report. However, we have several comments that follows. Firstly, regarding the note on the page 15, the report stating that Vietnam was still implicated in many seizures. made elsewhere and therefore has an estimated LA ratio of 0.29, implying a low overall enforcement. Vietnam believes that we have made great efforts and achieved significant results in combating illegal wildlife trade, including illegal ivory ones. These have shown in Vietnamese efforts and priorities in completing legal regulations on management and control of illegal wildlife trade, strict punishments on offenders committing these acts, especially Vietnam's penal code, were enacted in 2018. Vietnam has prosecuted over 500 wildlife violators, including 103 ivory offenders. 53 out of 89 arrested cases were prosecuted, accounting for 61.62% of cases related to ivories and its products. Vietnamese prosecution agencies settled 42 cases with 22 imprisonment ones, with average lengths of 5.3 years, and the highest sentence applied was 12 years and 7 months of imprisonment. Furthermore, Vietnam and Nigeria has agreed a final draft MOU on biodiversity conservation and cooperation in combating illegal wildlife and forest crimes. With the above-mentioned information, Vietnam would like to request a reconsideration of the assessment of our enforcement efforts in the report. Vietnam would like to provide our reports to the CITES Secretariat to facilitate the consideration at CoP19. We will also provide detailed information of arrested cases and their prosecution to the Secretariat. Secondly, every year, CITES parties should submit many reports to CITES Secretariat with different deadlines that make a considerable burden to the CITES parties, such as annual trade report and annual illegal trade report with deadline on the 31st October for the previous year in accordance with the provision of Resolution COP 11.17, Ref COP 18 on national reports, triannual reports on cited wildlife trade during the past 3 years, report on stockpile elephant ivory and rhino horn on February 28th every year in accordance with the provisions Resolution COP 10.10, Ref COP 18 on trade on elephant specimens, and Resolution COP Conference 9.14, Ref COP 17 on conservation of and trading African and Asian rhinoceros. Besides, many other reports on specific species such as tiger, pangolin, turtle must be submitted. In addition, in order to complete reports on enforcement, the reporting agency must contact with various management, enforcement, and procuracy agency, etc. And it also takes a lot of time and human resources to prepare this complicated report. Vietnam would like to recommend that ETIS reports should be integrated with the other reports, include the same content and the same deadlines. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Vietnam. I'm going to close my speakers list for parties now. I have 4 more parties, so I will take those 4 parties. I will ask those parties to keep their interventions brief, please. We do need to move on, and we will be talking about similar issues for quite some hours. So I will take Gabon and Togo, and then Kenya and Malaysia. Gabon, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente, je serai brève. Le Gabon prend note de ce rapport et remercie le secrétariat pour la préparation de ce rapport qui contient des informations et des analyses très importantes pour la compréhension du trafic de l'ivoire. Toutefois, le contenu du document ne semble pas approprié au public à qui il est destiné. Nous aimerions faire une suggestion pour améliorer la compréhension du document. En effet, ce dernier est adressé aux parties et non pas à des scientifiques. Nous pensons qu'il serait souhaitable de présenter les résultats des analyses dans des termes compréhensibles par tous et grâce à des figures claires, bien qu'il soit effectivement nécessaire d'inclure tous les détails méthodologiques, ceci pourrait figurer en annexe du document. Le Gabon réitère également son soutien à la demande exprimée lors du SC 74 de faire figurer une analyse des saisies d'ivoire liées aux parties ayant un marché intérieur légal de l'ivoire dans les prochains rapports. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Gabon. Togo, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Togo prend note du rapport ETIS. Et dans ce rapport, le Togo est classé dans le groupe 10 comme des pays qui n'ont pas transmis des données pour la période 2018-2020. J'aimerais souligner les difficultés de submission de données en ligne. Et je veux signaler que le Togo a toujours transmis les données. Mais il y a eu certaines difficultés au niveau du renseignement des données, de la transmission des données en ligne. Et cela nécessite un petit renforcement de capacité. Donc nous souhaitons que pour la submission de données en ligne, que le secrétariat puisse faire un renforcement de capacité au pays pour que ces données puissent vraiment parvenir à la base de données. Je profite de l'occasion pour remercier ETIS et surtout Mike pour les multiples appuis qu'il accorde au pays en matière de lutte contre l'abattage illégal des éléphants. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Togo. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and along with others, we want to thank Traffic for preparing this report. Madam Chair, Kenya was part of the first parties to be listed as a party of concern in Category 1 in the infamous Gang of 8, as was then lied to. The listing actually helped us improve on our law enforcement and address the issue of trafficking through our ports, and also led to legislative changes that helped in making our laws being more punitive. Madam Chair, we make a recollection that we did recommend beyond CITES, Mike, it is a technical team, to incorporate the technical experts from range states during the analysis process and the publishing of manuscripts from the data, because this data belongs to the range states. And I think this will address issues that parties disown reports once they are published to the Conference of Parties. Madam Chair, we also want to support the possibility of having a joint analysis of ETIS and MIC data as suggested in paragraph 11 of CoP19 in document 66.6 be explored and have the ETIS report for COP20 presented as outlined in paragraph 11 thereof. And finally, Madam Chair, just like US, we'll want to recommend that the date of submission of ETIS data by parties be maintained to be 31st March each year, other than being pushed to September. That, I think, has been a practice, and we see no basis for changing the submission date. I submit, Chair.
Thank you, Kenya. My final party is Malaysia. Malaysia, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, Malaysia welcomes this report and thanks the Secretariat for preparing it. Although the report notes that Malaysia retains its transit status, Malaysia would like to highlight that we have improved from being in Category A to Category B in the NIAP process. Malaysia is continuously committed to combat illegal trade of ivory at many levels, including at the grassroots levels. This year, the government of Malaysia has taken a move in establishing a new Wildlife Crime Bureau within the Royal Malaysian Police to increase the intel and enforcement measures within enforcement agencies. Madam Chair, Malaysia has a concern about the methodology used in this report, where Malaysia has been clustered in Cluster 2 with other source countries. This concern was also raised within the CoP18. We will detail this concern in the next agenda regarding review of ETIS. Malaysia takes note of this report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Malaysia. So I would like to take 2 or 3 observers. So I will open the floor to observers, but only 2 or 3, and I will ask you to keep your interventions to 2 minutes if we can. I would like to move on. I think we've had some good discussion here, and we're making good time. We're on time for what I was hoping. So we'll take the Centre for Environmental Forensic Science. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The Center for Environmental Forensic Science wishes to reinforce the comments by DRC, Malaysia, Kenya, and Singapore. ETIS data are critical, but their data collection method provides minimal, reliable information on the origin of the ivory in these seizures. This gets complicated because it can cause transit countries to be unfairly listed because their ivory is assumed to have been derived from their country, while the countries where the poaching actually occurred escape pressures to better combat these crimes. We recommend that DNA analyses of large ivory seizures be incorporated as part of the ETIS data. These data can also corroborate ETIS and MIC data, as well as encourage stronger compliance of countries making these seizures to ResCom 1010 to submit their seizures for origin analysis of ivory in seizures greater than a half a ton. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other calls for the floor. I'm going to propose a way forward. So I've noted some technical comments from several parties about the seizure data. I've noted some constructive comments about audiences, and I've noticed some party-specific concerns. We do have the team here from the Secretariat, who I'm sure would be happy to have bilateral discussions on a party-by-party basis. Traffic is also here. What I'm proposing we do is we note the statements made by those parties here, and that Committee 2 recommends that the COP notes this report, and we will move forward from there. So I don't see any objection to that. So with that, we will close this item. So we are going to start with CoP19 document 66.1 on the implementation of Resolution Conf 1010, Rev CoP 18 on trade in elephant specimens. I did want to take a moment to just lay out what I would like to do structurally with this document and the next. So document 66.1 has 5 parts. The first part is on the closure of domestic ivory markets. The second is on trade in mammoth ivory. The third is on trade in Asian elephants. The fourth is on stocks and stockpiles. And the fifth on the National Ivory Action Plan process. Document 66.3, and I say this for the information of the proponents for document 66.3, also deals with matters to do with domestic ivory markets in the similar way in part to the way that part 1 of document 66.1 does. So what I would like to do is have document 66.1 introduced in its entirety, and then I would like to hold off on discussion about part 1 on domestic ivory markets. So we will discuss parts 2 through 5 together. Then I will have the proponents introduce document 66.3, and we will discuss part 1 of 66.1 alongside document 66.3. So we will take the 2 elements on domestic ivory markets together. I hope that makes sense. I'm not being clear, I will repeat throughout. So when we take interventions on the first part of our discussion on 66.1, I would request that you keep those to parts 2 through 5 of the document. Rest assured, I will come back to part 1. So with that, document 66.1 has been prepared by the Secretariat at the request of the Standing Committee. So I'll ask the Secretariat to introduce it. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document CoP19 66.1, submitted by the Secretariat at the request of the Standing Committee, provides information on the implementation of Resolution Conference 1010, Rev CoP18, on trade in elephant specimens, and includes the actions decided on and determinations made by the Standing Committee regarding specific elements of the resolution, as well as relevant decisions adopted at the 18th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. The document is divided in 5 parts, each of which will be introduced with respect to the relevant decisions addressed. Part 1 of the document on the implementation of decisions 18.117 and 18.119 on closure of domestic ivory markets includes information on the reports submitted by 8 parties in response to a notification issued by the Secretariat requesting parties that have not disclosed their domestic markets for commercial trade in raw and worked ivory to report on measures they are taking to ensure that their domestic ivory markets are not contributing to poaching or illegal trade. The Standing Committee requested the Secretariat to remind parties to provide information on the status of the legality of their domestic ivory markets and efforts to implement Resolution Conference 1010, Rev CoP18, and annual reporting on this resolution relating to the marking, inventories, and security of elephant ivory stocks. The Standing Committee furthermore agreed to recommend to the Conference of the Parties the renewal of decisions 18.117 to 18.119 as contained in Annex 1 of the present document. The Standing Committee also noted a suggestion by the EU relating to an analysis of ivory seizures connected to parties with legal domestic markets for commercial trade in ivory. This is further discussed in CoP19 Doc 66.6 on the report on the Elephant Trade Information System, ETIS, and a draft decision relating to this is proposed for consideration by the COP in document CoP19 66.3. With regards to part 2 of the document on the implementation of decisions 18.120 and 18.121 on trade in mammoth ivory, external funding was not secured to commission the study in accordance with decision 18.120. The Standing Committee agreed to propose to the COP that decisions 18.120 and 18.121 be deleted and new draft decisions contained in Annex 2 of the present document be considered for adoption, directing the Secretariat to prepare a report to the Standing Committee, taking into consideration available information and research studies. The Secretariat, in its comments on the document, proposed that the instruction to the Secretariat should be clarified to ensure additional resources are not required, and proposed an amendment to the draft decision in this regard. Part 3 of the document on implementation of decisions 18.226 and 18.227 on trade in Asian elephants, Elephas maximus, includes information considered by the Standing Committee relating to the responses from Cambodia, Indonesia, New Zealand, Thailand, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland on implementation of Decision 18.226. Effective implementation of Decision 18.226 was emphasized as a significant means to achieve the Jakarta Declaration for Asian Elephant Conservation agreed by Asian elephant range states in 2017. The Standing Committee agreed to propose to COP that Decision 18.226 be renewed and revised to be directed to Asian elephant range states. The revised draft decision 18.266 Rev CoP19 is contained in Annex 3 to the present document. In respect to decision 18.227, The document notes efforts by the Secretariat through its Monitoring the Illegal Killing of Elephants, or MIKE program, to provide implementation support to range states in Southeast Asia. Considering the work initiated by the Secretariat on possible minimum requirements for a registering, marking, and tracing system for live Asian elephants, the Standing Committee agreed that Decision 18.227 be deleted and replaced with a new draft decision directed to the Secretariat. The new draft decisions are contained in Annex 3 to the present document. The Secretariat proposes a minor editorial change to the new draft decision 19AA, paragraph A, as shown and underlined in Annex 3, to facilitate consistency with the proposed revision of Decision 18.226. The Secretariat also noted in its comments that the Asian elephant range states adopted the Kathmandu Declaration in April 2022. The priority commitments to be met by 2025 align with the draft decisions recommended for adoption by CoP19. Part 4 of the document provides the COP with information on the implementation of decisions 18.182 to 18.185 on stocks and stockpiles, elephant ivory. The Standing Committee reviewed and approved guidance on practical guidance on ivory stockpile management and the review of elephant destruction methods. With the subsequent posting of this guidance on the CITES website, Decisions 18.182 and 18.183 have been implemented. The Chair of the Standing Committee and the Chair of the Committee's Intersessional Working Group on Guidance on Ivory Stockpiles proposed to COP19, as requested by the Standing Committee, a new draft decision to provide for the sharing of information relating to new techniques and technologies related to practical guidance on ivory stockpile management. The proposed new draft decision is contained in Annex 4 to the present document for consideration and adoption by COP. In line with Decision 18.184, the Secretariat submitted a report to the Standing Committee on information submitted by parties on the level of government-held stockpiles of ivory and significant privately held stockpiles within their territory, as provided for in terms of Resolution Conference 1010, Rev. COP 18. The Standing Committee, among others, agreed to propose the renewal of Decisions 18.184 and 18.185 to COP so that the Standing Committee can consider the Secretariat's report at the 77th meeting of the Standing Committee. The proposed revisions to Decisions 18.184 and 18.185 are contained in Annex 4 to the present document. Part 5 of the document provides information on the implementation of the National Ivory Action Plan process and the status of implementation following the 74th meeting of the Standing Committee. At the time of writing the present document, there were 14 parties participating in the NIAP process, as presented in the table at paragraph 36 of the document. At the 75th meeting of the Standing Committee last Sunday, the Standing Committee, in accordance with the NIAP guidelines, amongst others, considered whether any parties identified by the ETIS report prepared for COP19 and not currently subject to the NIAP process should be included in the process, and if any current NIAP parties that achieve their NIAPs should exit it. The committee agreed at present to not include any new parties in the NIAP process and to let Ethiopia, a party that has achieved its NIAP, to exit the process. To conclude, the Conference of the Parties is invited to note the information contained in the present document and consider for adoption the draft decisions contained in Annexes 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the present document. The COP is also invited to agree to the deletion of decisions 18.120, 18.121, and 18.227 as they have been replaced by new draft decisions, and to delete decisions 18.182 and 18.183 as they have been implemented.
Thank you, Secretariat, for your introduction of this paper. So just a reminder, we will be taking comments at this point in time on parts 2 through 5 of this document. So the decisions in annexes 2, 3 and 4. I will hold discussion on the decisions in Annex 1 until we've completed discussion on those matters. A few other notes. I would like to avoid discussing any particular party compliance matters or the intricacies of the NIAPs when we get there. That is a matter for the Standing Committee, and as the Secretariat has outlined, we've already discussed those this week, so please, I offer these requests so that we can continue to progress through this matter. So I will open the floor for parties. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the intervention from India regarding Doc 66.1 Annex 3. The Asian elephant is the national heritage animal of India, which reflects its special place in Indian culture. It receives the highest degree of protection under Indian law. India's Wildlife Protection Act 1972 bans the trade of all elephant ivory, and the ivory market and ivory carving industries have been closed permanently in India since 1990. The high level of protection has led to a stable population of Asian elephant in the country. We therefore support measures to close legal markets which are contributing towards poaching of elephants or illegal trade of ivory. The Government of India has been taking various measures to manage captive elephants in India. Our legislation requires a valid ownership certificate issued by the Forest Department in order for any person to possess a captive elephant. In addition to this, microchips are also widely used to identify legally owned captive elephants. Recently, the Government of India, under Project Elephant, has started DNA profiling of captive elephants in collaboration with Wildlife Institute of India. It involves data capture through a mobile application named Gajah Suchna. In principle, we agree that every elephant range country should adopt a reliable marking and tracing system for captive elephants on their own. Therefore, in view of the above, India supports the revised and new draft decision on trade in Asian elephant given in Annex 3, CoP19, Doc 66.1. However, we do not support the Secretariat's proposed revision to decision 18.226 Rev CoP19 in Annex 3 of the Doc 61.1 to direct the decision applicable only to Asian elephant range states. Since the decision relates to trade in Asian elephants and their parts and derivatives, it must be directed to all parties involved in such trade and not the just range states. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thailand would like to thank the Secretary in preparation of the document 66.1 on the implementation of Resolution Con 10.10 F CoP18 on the trade in elephant specimens and related elephant decisions. Thailand notes the information contained in the present documents and agrees that the decision implemented be deleted as stated in the recommendation A and C on page 7. With regard to the recommendations B, where the Conference of the Party is invited to adopt the draft decision contained in Annex 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the present documents, the Thailand has no objection on the adoption of the draft decision contained in Annex 1, 2, and 4. However, the draft decision contained in Annex 3 regarding revised and new draft decision on trade in Asian elephants, the Thailand is of the opinion that all the revised and the new draft decision should direct to parties, not specific only to the ASEAN elephant range states, because there are non-Asian elephant range states involved in the trade in ASEAN elephants and their parts and derivatives. As such, those measures were applicable, stated in the revised and the new draft decision contained in Annex 3 of the documents. The non-state elephant range state should also implement such a measure to report to the Secretariat. Therefore, Thailand suggests to replace the word Asian elephant range state appearing in Annex 3 to the document 66.1 with the words parties. Concerning the new draft decision 19.AA directed to the Secretariat on the development of registering, marking, and tracing system for the live captive Asian elephants, Thailand agreed to develop the minimum requirements for this system as suggested in the present documents. The Thailand, however, would like to share our current legislation practice that we have applied for the captive elephants and tigers. At present, the Thailand has developed the DNA-based legislation for both species, even though such a legislation system is reliable and straightforward, but it's still very costly and depends on the availability of the technical aspects. Even so, Thailand can share this expertise with the other parties. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Thailand. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States notes and appreciates the report from the Standing Committee. We support draft decisions in Annex 1 through 4. Oh, we're only talking about 2 through 4 with some edits. Specifically, for trade in mammoth ivory in Annex 2, the United States recognizes the difficulty in obtaining external funding to commission a study on the trade in mammoth ivory and its impacts and contribution to the illegal trade in elephant ivory and the poaching of elephants and the ongoing independent research on this issue. We support the adoption of the revised draft decisions in Annex 2 to the document, including the Secretariat's suggested edits to the proposed revisions of 18.120, as specified in its comments. For the trade in Asian elephants, Annex 3, we align our views with India and Thailand and note that the illegal trade in Asian elephants and their parts and derivatives is not limited to Asian elephant range states, and suggest that the decisions 18.226 be directed to the parties, especially Asian elephant range states, rather than only Asian elephant range states. We believe that the draft decisions 19.AA, which direct the Secretariat to develop minimum requirements for registering, marking, and tracing systems for live Asian elephants, should also include an instruction directing the Secretariat to work with relevant experts in the trade in live Asian elephants, including the IUCN Asian Elephant Specialist Group, to identify, consider, and collaborate with existing or planned range state efforts with partners to develop and implement registration systems, and to ensure there are no duplications in effort in development of or redundancies in existing or planned efforts by range states and their partners. For stocks and stockpiles, Annex 4, the United States supports the revised draft decisions in Annex 4, including 19AA, the new draft decision directed to the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The EU and its member states thank the Secretariat for this extensive report on the implementation by parties of Resolution COP 10.10. As requested by the Chair, I will refrain from commenting on Annex 1 of this document and provide our comments on this later on. With regards to Section 2 dealing with 2 decisions on trade in mammoth ivory, the EU and its member states can support the draft decisions contained in Annex 2 with the amendments made by the Secretariat, ensuring that no additional resources are required to undertake this task. On Part 3 of the report, on the implementation of the decisions linked to the trade in Asian elephants, we support the renewal of Decision 18.226 and call upon the Asian elephant range states to report on their implementation in the next intersessional period. We also support the new draft decisions 19AA and 19BB on the development of minimum requirements for a registering, marking, and tracing system for live Asian elephants. We agree with the suggestion made by the USA to direct these decisions to all parties, especially Asian elephant range states. Furthermore, at SC 74, the practical guidance for the management of ivory stockpiles, including their disposal, were adopted, and this has been posted on the CITES website. The EU and its member states agree that Decision 18.182 and 18.183 have been implemented, but we agree as well that this guidance should remain a living document, so we support the new draft Decision 19AA that will allow parties to provide information about new techniques and technologies on ivory stockpile management. We also support the renewal of the two other decisions, 18.184 and 18.185, as mentioned in Annex 4. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union, and thank you everyone for your comments being so focused on the annexes and your constructive input. This is excellent this morning. I have several more parties on my list. I will take you. Indonesia, you're first on my list. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indonesia, as one of the 13 Asian elephant range states which reported to be secretariat on the implementation of decision 18.2226 as highlighted the SG 74.68. As the only Asian elephant subspecies in listed critical endangered, we put strong effort and commitment to combat indicate declining trend. Indonesia support the renewal of decision 18.226 and the new draft decision 19 AA to 19 BB. Part of that is we supported the registration, marking and tracing system for live Asian elephant under 19.AA and to be applicable globally. Further establish a need for this decision to be directed to both Asian elephant range state and parties involved in the trade in Asian elephant and their part of the derivatives. As we have committed by having our elephant database system for our wild population and captive elephant management system in SIM Gajah portal, which managed solely by our server in Ministry of Environmental and Forestry of Republic Indonesia. With regard to ivory stockpile on implementation of resolution 1010 on trade in elephant specimen, Indonesia will support the decision with some commitment on recording the remaining stock filling and need more assistance on the ivory disposal procedure, which based on the disposal of ivory stock procedure. This system actually in line with Jakarta Declaration on 2017 Asian Elephant Range State Meeting, which encourage range state countries on cooperatively develop captive Asian elephant registration program, including where appropriate microchip and or DNA-based system, ensure cross-border movements of captive Asian elephant are in compliance with national and international law and regulation. And then Indonesia proposed on Annex 3 that parties amend the decision 18.226 to be direct to both Asian elephant range states and parties, echoing India and USA the position, and then new draft decision 19 EAB amendment in line with this. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Indonesia. My party list has remained static for some time, so I'm going to close it and I will take the remaining parties on my list. I have the United Kingdom, followed by Sri Lanka. United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. We thank the Secretariat and Standing Committee for this document, which proposes extensive further work to implement Resolution Conference 1010 Rev CoP18 on trade in elephant specimens. In general, the UK supports adoption of the draft decisions in Annexes 2 to 4 and the deletion of decisions that have been implemented or have been replaced. However, we have some additional points with regards to the Asian elephant decisions in Annex 3. Firstly, given that trade in Asian elephants and their parts and derivatives is not confined to Asian elephant range states, we agree with India, Thailand and other parties that Decision 18.226, Rev CoP19, is directed to all parties rather than just Asian elephant range states. Secondly, regarding Draft Decisions 19AA subparagraph B, we propose that minimum is deleted from in front of requirements, as it is important that an effective and reliable system for registering Asian elephants is developed, rather than one with minimum requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. Sri Lanka, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would first like to thank the Government of Panama for its warm welcome and congratulate Chair on her appointment as Sri Lanka takes the stage for the first time in Committee 2. Greetings from a fellow elephant range state. We concur with the interventions from India, EU, USA, and other countries for Annex 3. In particular, agreeing that Decision 18.226 should remain applicable to all parties affected by trade in elephant specimens so that it remains flexible and broad in its scope, since non-range countries can also be involved in illegal trade. Sri Lanka also feels that it is critical that all relevant stakeholders, in particular range states, are closely involved in the development of the registration system for captive elephants as proposed. We therefore propose language to amend draft decision 19.AA para B as follows. After the words availability of external funding, we suggest inserting the words in collaboration with range states and other relevant stakeholders, Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Sri Lanka. We caught that. So I will take Malaysia, followed by Japan, followed by Gabon. Malaysia, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, I'll be brief. In general, Malaysia supports the draft decisions, but is in line with India, Thailand, the UK, and the USA on the draft decision 18.226. We support that extending the decision to all parties affected by trade of elephant specimens is important and not only confining the decision to Asian elephant range states. Thank you.
Thank you, Malaysia. Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan thanks SC and the Secretariat to prepare this document. Japan supports the recommendation in paragraph 38 in this document by SC in principle. Regarding B, we basically supposed to adopt draft decision in the next 2 of the document. However, we would like to make a comment on the draft decision which are related to mammoth. Although it's noted that the work can be implemented within the existing work of the Secretariat in the next 5 of the current document, we are not convinced that it is appropriate to use the limited human resources of the Secretariat for the work on the mammoth task. Recording the discussion at the CoP18 as to whether it is within the scope of CITES or not. Therefore, as in Decision 18.120, we consider it appropriate to implement the project only when external funding is available. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. And finally, Gabon, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous suivrons votre recommandation d'ignorer la partie 1 du document pour le moment. Nous suggérons de déplacer également la discussion relative à la partie 4 du document pour qu'elle soit examinée en même temps que le document COP19, DOC 66.2.1. En effet, le Gabon soutient le renouvellement des décisions 1884 à 1885, sous réserve du rajout des modifications proposées dans le document COP19 DOC 66.2.1. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Gabon. I will open the floor to one or two observers if anyone would like the floor. I think I have China requesting the floor. China, I will take you as my last party. I had closed my list, but I will take you. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We have some comments on trading mammoth ivory. The study on trading mammoth ivory is a compromise from an interesting listing proposal on mammoths in CoP19. No funding was forthcoming for the study on the trading mammoth ivory, although relevant information may be available from other sources. Efforts to study trade in mammoth ivory and its possible impact on elephant ivory, highly unlikely to yield useful results in terms of better regulating use of elephant ivory, should be discouraged. The Secretariat, already overloaded, should not further expand valuable resources on it. In this regard, we oppose the two draft decisions on mammoth ivory in Annex 2. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. And I will just see if any observers, I have no one on my list from the observer group. Oh, I do now. I have two, and I will take the two quick off the mark. I will take Flora and Fauna International, followed by the AZA. FFI, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first time that Fauna and Flora International takes the floor, we join other speakers in thanking our hosts, Panama, and congratulating you, Chair, on your nomination. We're making this intervention on behalf of 12 observer organizations, and we'll provide the list to the rapporteur later. We wish to make 3 points on Doc 66.1 Annex 3 regarding the revised and new draft decisions on trade in Asian elephants. First, we support parties such as India, Thailand, Indonesia, and others who have spoken in favor of retaining Decision 18.226 as it currently stands, directed to all parties involved in the trade in Asian elephants and their parts and derivatives. If so retained, new draft decision 19AA and 19BB should be amended in line with this for clarity. Second, in relation to developing the requirements for registration, marking, and tracing systems, it would be critical that the Secretariat develop these requirements in collaboration with range states and expert stakeholders. To that end, we support decision 19AA subparagraph B being amended along the lines suggested by Sri Lanka. Third, we would like to make the general point that the most robust registration, marking, and tracing systems include the profiling of animals through DNA. This option was highlighted in the COP17 review of illegal trade in Asian live elephants as the most secure, reliable, and affordable system. And it's also mentioned in the 2022 Kathmandu Declaration for Asian Elephants Conservation. The requirements developed under this decision must not be a step backward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, FFI. AZA, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The Association of Zoos and Aquariums, through its Saving Animals from Extinction, or SAFE, Asian Elephant Program, is actively working with several Asian elephant range states in the conservation of this iconic species. This work is particularly focused on the registration, marking, and tracing of live Asian elephants and may serve as a model that could be expanded in the Asian elephants range. We welcome opportunities to serve this larger community. We welcome the renewal of Decision 18.226 and new draft Decision 19.AA, and we stand ready to assist the Secretariat and Asian elephant range states in their implementation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, AZA. So as I've indicated, we will move on to part one once I've had the proponents of document 66.3 introduce their document, but I thought it might be useful for me to just temporarily sum up where we've gotten to in these discussions. And I will come back and do that again when we close document 66.1. So we've held discussions on Annex 2. I have heard mostly support for the adoption of the draft decisions on trade in mammoth ivory in Annex 2, but with the amendment proposed by the Secretariat, which is on page 8 of the document. which goes to the resources allocated to that. I've heard only one party in opposition, but general support. And the decisions in Annex 3 related to trade in Asian elephants. We have heard a lot of support for maintaining the direction of Decision 18.226, Rev CoP19 to parties. I did see some language around especially Asian elephant range states, but I think parties has been the general consensus view, and I think that's a little bit simpler. In general, we've seen support for that decision. We've seen support for the new draft decision 19AA with the amendment from Sri Lanka in paragraph B regarding collaboration with range states and other relevant stakeholders, and the UK's amendment deleting the word minimum in the first line of paragraph B, and support for the adoption of new draft decision 19BB, and also support for the adoption of the decisions in Annex 4 on stocks and stockpiles, noting the synergies with the future stockpiles documents that we will get to. So that's my... And the Secretariat has reminded me, thank you, of a consequential amendment to, in Annex 3, Decision 19AA, that will be a consequential amendment based on our discussion on Decision 18.226 around the direction to the Asian elephant range states, that we will follow the same formulation with the request to the parties there. I've also noted the decisions that we have discussed being deleted, which are 18.120 through 18.121, 18.227, 18.182 and 18.183. But as I said, I will come back and sum up fully on that document once we've had our discussion on domestic ivory markets. So I'd like to keep document 66.1 open for discussion of part 1, domestic ivory markets, but I would also like to invite the proponents on COP19 document 66.3 to introduce their document. Implementing aspects of Resolution Conf 1010, Rev COP18 on the closure of domestic ivory markets. This document has been submitted by Benin, Burkina Faso, Equatorial Guinea, Ethiopia, Gabon, Liberia, Niger, Senegal and Togo. I have Nigeria asking for the floor. Nigeria, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving the floor again. So Nigeria is in support of the intervention and adds his voice to those who are urging Japan to close its domestic ivory market as recommended by Resolution Conference 1010 Rev COP18. Legal domestic ivory market fuel demand for ivory and create enforcement challenges. Madam Chair, you agree with us that we support the draft decision contained in COP19 66.3 Annex 1. Regarding the draft decision 19BB, it is important that the Secretariat compilation of reports should include any relevant information concerning whether a party domestic market for commercial trade in raw or worked ivory is contributing to poaching or illegal trade. Such information should include, but not limited to, an ETIS analysis of ivory seizures connected to each party with a legal domestic market. This information will be useful to help conceptualize the information received from party to better understand the impact of the measures highlighted in their reports. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Nigeria. I have a bunch of parties already jumping on my list. So I don't know how everyone is doing this, but I've got 2 documents open. We are looking at the decisions in Annex 1 of document 66.1 and the decisions in document 66.3 also in Annex 1. And I will take your views on these 2 documents together. I will make some observations first, which might help. So in document 66.1 Annex 1, the first decision directed to parties, 18.117 Rev CoP19, is more or less identical to decision 19AA in document 66.3. And there are similarities also between decisions 18.118 in document 66.1 and new decision 19BB in document 66.3. So I will open the floor to parties. I have a long list already, so I will, because I've just said I'm opening my list, I will open it for a few minutes. Okay. I have a full screen of parties already. More than a full screen of parties already, so I will have to close my list right now if I'm going to give all of these parties the floor, so I will close it for now. This might be a evolving discussion, and I would encourage you to work together and share your joint statements or whatever we can do. I've got a lot of parties wishing to speak, so I will start at the top and we'll see how we go. But please do help us make sure you say which document you're talking about, which decision you're talking about, and take it slow if you have language amendments. So I will take Marley. Marley, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Le Mali partage la proposition soumise par le Bénin, le Burkina, la Guinée équatoriale, l'Éthiopie, le Gabon, le Libéria, le Niger, le Sénégal et le Togo, car c'est une préoccupation pour mon pays aussi. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Marley. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Thailand would like to reiterate what the Thailand has made intervention every time when the issue on the closure of domestic ivory markets has been brought to the consideration of the Conference of the Party, that the trade in the context of the CITES means only international trade between the countries regulated by the conventions. In case of Thailand, the domestic trade is considered as sovereignty right that has been practiced for a long period of time, almost a century. Such a trade is in compliance with the related national laws and regulations. The practice of the Thailand in control of the domestic ivory market, the Thailand followed the CITES provisions, which is the resolution CON 10.10, left COP18 of the CITES. In addition, the Thailand enacted the Elephant Ivory Act in 2015 to effectively regulate domestic ivory trade. The success of the Thailand in control of the legal domestic ivory trade is proven by the findings of the ETIS report, which is prepared for the consideration of this COP, such that Thailand is not listed in any groups of the countries affected by the illegal ivory trade. Thailand is of the opinion that there is no reason that the closure of domestic ivory markets is necessary. Based on the nationals mentioned above, the Thailand would recommend to reject the draft decision contained in Annex 1 to the document 66.3, but to adopt the draft decision 18.117, Red COP19, on closure of domestic ivory markets contained in Annex 1 to the document 66.1. The Thailand would also like to echo the comments made by the Secretariat on the page 6 of this document, not to adopt the amendments to draft decision 19.BB and 19.CC, as suggested by the proponents with the concern in relation to the undefined scope for of term any other available information and procedure in obtaining the information for decision 19.bb and 19.cc. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Thailand. Ms. Benin, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. S'agissant du document 66.1, le Bénin soutient le renouvellement des décisions 1817 et 1819, et aussi recommandé par le document 66.3, que nous soutenons également, en ce sens que cette proposition soutient la mise en œuvre donc, de la résolution CONF 1010, révisée COP 18, sur la fermeture des marchés intérieurs de l'ivoire, en évaluant le marché intérieur ouvert de l'ivoire afin de garantir qu'il ne contribue pas au braconnage et au commerce illégal d'ivoire. Cette proposition 66.3 met également en lumière certains pays hors de l'aire de répartition qui disposent encore d'importants stocks, et cela demeure une source d'exportation illégale d'ivoire qui sape les efforts de fermeture des marchés d'ivoire. Donc nous recommandons donc fortement donc la prise de cette décision 66.3. Merci.
Thank you. I see the United Kingdom. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK welcomes efforts by parties to close their domestic ivory markets that are contributing to poaching or illegal international trade, as recommended in Resolution Conference 1010, Rev COP 18. As recognised in the preambular text of Resolution Conference 1010, legal domestic markets for ivory may increase the risk to elephant populations and local communities due to the opportunity it creates for the laundering of illegal ivory under the guise of legality. The UK therefore considers the closure of domestic ivory markets critical to assist efforts to protect elephant populations. It is vital that parties that have not closed their domestic markets report on measures they are taking to ensure that their domestic ivory markets are not contributing to illegal trade. The UK therefore supports adoption of the draft decisions in Annex 1 of CoP19.66.1. We also support the adoption of proposed decision 19DD in CoP19.66.3 regarding analysis of ivory seizures connected to parties with legal domestic ivory markets. However, we consider it important that this analysis is carried out as soon as possible. We note the Secretariat's concerns about timings, but hope that this can be navigated and urge that this work is carried out by SC 77. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. Botswana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana continues to work regionally and internationally to combat poaching and the illegal international trade in ivory. While Botswana currently does not have a domestic ivory market, we have always considered the issue of domestic ivory markets to be a sovereign matter, provided such markets do not contribute to illegal killing and trafficking of elephant ivory. With regard to the draft decisions proposed in Annex 1 of document 66.3, we are concerned by the reference to the consideration and inclusion of any other relevant information, as is mentioned in 19BB and 19CC of the draft decision. And we wonder who would confirm the veracity of such information. A consensus approach on the matter of domestic ivory markets that are contributing to poaching and illegal ivory trade was reached at COP18, and we do not see the need to consider a new set of decisions on the same matter at this time. Botswana is therefore not in a position to support the draft decisions proposed in Annex 1 of document 66.3. We, however, would support the draft decisions 18.117 to 18.119 in document 66.1. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Botswana. I see Gabon. Gabon, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Le Gabon intervient en tant que co-auteur du document COP19 DOC 66.3. En effet, l'existence de marchés légaux d'ivoire reste une préoccupation majeure, car tout marché légal offre la possibilité de blanchir de l'ivoire sur le marché et stimule la demande, contribuant ainsi au commerce illégal et au braconnage. Concernant la proposition de décision 19.bb à l'annexe 1 du document COP19 DOC 66.3, le terme « information pertinente disponible » fait clairement référence à toute donnée existante et probante pouvant aider à déterminer si les marchés intérieurs d'ivoire contribuent au braconnage ou au commerce illégal. Des rapports d'ONG récents ont mis en évidence des exportations illégales d'ivoire acquis sur des marchés légaux, démontrant ainsi que l'existence des marchés légaux continue de favoriser les marchés illégaux, faisant ainsi peser une menace sur la survie des éléphants. Ainsi, nous réitérons également notre soutien à l'adoption de la proposition faite lors du SC 74 par l'Union européenne et soutenue par plusieurs parties, visant à mandater le groupe de travail ETIS pour faire, le plus rapidement possible, une analyse des saisies d'ivoire impliquant les pays qui n'ont pas fermé leur marché intérieur au commerce de l'ivoire. Par conséquent, le Gabon soutient l'adoption des décisions 19.AA à 19.DD telles que proposées en annexe 1 du document COP19 DOC 66.3 et rejette les modifications proposées par le secrétariat. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Gabon. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Le Sénégal, en tant que co-auteur, va dans le même sens que les autres pays qui ont proposé la proposition. Je crois qu'il est temps quand même qu'on se regarde dans la face pour dire certaines choses. Parce que ce document-là, depuis 2016, 2019, voilà, nous sommes à la COP 2022, le problème reste. On a accepté au niveau international la fermeture du commerce de l'ivoire. Par conséquent, on ne saurait le faire en admettant parallèlement des marchés nationaux. Et c'est des stocks qui ne finissent jamais. Ça veut dire que le braconnage continue à alimenter ces soi-disant marchés officiels. Pour ne pas être long, Madame la Présidente, le Sénégal soutient fortement la proposition qui vient d'être présentée par notre collègue du Nigeria. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. So I have several more parties. I'm going to take Japan, followed by the European Union, followed by South Africa. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan supports the proposed decision of Annex 1 of the item 66.1 and the item 66.3 should be rejected because the framework of the closure of the domestic market for ivory has already been established by consensus. At COP17, the criteria of the closure of the domestic market is established through the amendment of the resolution CoP19. In addition, the reporting system has been established at COP18, which requires the parties with domestic legal market to make a report the measure taken not to contribute illegal international trade and poaching. And such scheme is to be updated in agenda item 66.1. We concern the proposal of item 66.3 since such proposal causes adverse effect on the mandate of the CITES. Such proposal do not base on the scientific background, and such proposal causes a risk to apply to other species. We would like to explain the following. The proponent parties of item 66.3 submitted first proposal to close the domestic ivory market in accordance with resolution 10.10 part 3 if such party is demonstrably connected to the illegal international trade in ivory. This is paragraph 1 of the annex 1 of the 66.3. The second proposal we think is a proposal to introduce as if it were verification procedure. The reason why we think as if it were a verification procedure is this in the 19.bb, the Secretariat shall, according to the 19BB of the draft proposal of item 66.3, the Secretariat shall prepare a report based on not only reports by the parties with legal market, but also based on the information with the term together with any other available information relevant to them. The Standard Committee consider any other relevant information available, and the Secretary shall conduct an analysis of ivory seizures connected to the parties with legal domestic market for each commercial trade in ivory, and include the analysis of the ETIS report. The first one is challenging to the existing criteria of paragraph 3 of the regulation 1010, with ambiguous term and makes the criteria more complex to the parties. The proposal, the second point, as if it were a verification procedure, seems to introduce the third-party verification procedures, since the Secretary and parties are able to make any question officially in advance the SCs, and at least we think the party which have not closed their market seems to be obliged to answer such questions, even though the origin of the information is not based on the scientifically rigorous biased analysis or partial. The meaning of the proposal is to establish further requirement to regulate other parties' domestic control measures on wildlife. So the mandate of the CITES is international trade on endangered wildlife. If we easily allow such type of discussions, for instance, third-party verification to domestic control measures of its territory, the result of such discussion may apply to other wildlife as well. We believe that there is no scientific evidence that all of the legal domestic market contribute to the poaching or illegal trade. And the situation is not changed between COP18 and COP19. Madam Chair, we concern the misleading information to let the third parties have wrong impression to Japan. To take this opportunity, we would like to explain the outline of how Japan is not contributing to the illegal trade and poaching. Regarding the characteristic of
Japan, I will just tell you, you have had 5 minutes. I will give you another minute to do so because I know it's important.
Yes, sorry. Japan have uploaded information document in 48 and information document 47 to explain how Japan is not contributing to the poaching or illegal trade. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Japan. Then I said I would take the European Union, followed by South Africa. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The EU and its member states accept the renewal of the draft decisions 18.117 to 18.119, as mentioned in document 66.1, Annex 1. On the proposed additions mentioned in document 66.3, we feel it's not clear what is meant by the addition of the words any other available information as proposed by the proponents of this document, and we are not convinced of the added value. Therefore, we do not agree to these changes. We do accept the revised decision 19.DD as redrafted by the CITES Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you. EU, South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa has a small, well-regulated domestic ivory market, which has not contributed to illegal trade, as indicated in our regular reporting to the CITES Secretariat. We believe that South Africa has a sovereign right to sustainably use its natural resources and thus do not support the closure of domestic ivory markets. We do, however, support the draft decision 19DD in Doc 66.3. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. I'm going to take the remaining 8 or so parties on my list, so I will take them from what I can see as the top. Togo, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Togo soutient et recommande à la COP d'adopter les projets de décision inclus dans l'annexe 1 du document 66.3 et exhorte les pays concernés à fermer leur marché domestique de l'ivoire comme recommandé par la résolution CONF 10.10 REV COP 18. En particulier, le Togo soutient la conduite d'une analyse par le groupe consultatif technique MIC et ETIS des saisies d'ivoire liées à chaque partie ayant un marché de l'ivoire ouvert et son inclusion dans le rapport ETIS au SC77, aux réunions ultérieures du comité permanent ainsi qu'aux futures réunions de la COP. Cette analyse doit être traitée de manière urgente et ne doit pas être reportée. Merci.
Thank you, Togo. I have Kenya followed by Zimbabwe. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Resolution 1010 recommends that all parties and non-parties should close domestic ivory markets that are contributing to poaching or illegal trade, with many CITES parties having adopted the recommendation and taken steps to close their markets. Prioritizing the closure of the remaining significant market is key to the effective and uniform implementation of this resolution. Madam Chair, remaining open ivory market poses real risks to perpetuate transnational wildlife crime because they can continue to incentivize illegal imports and exports. To determine the most significant domestic ivory markets, it is necessary to take into account not only the current sources of ivory that supply that market, but also potential future sources of ivory. Thus, non-range states with open domestic markets that must source their ivory from countries with elephant populations, necessitating the import of ivory to maintain the market, should be prioritized for closure. Madam Chair, Kenya therefore proposed the adoption by the COP the new draft decisions contained in document 66.3. And I think this expansion and the misunderstanding by the EU, any other information, will be able to address those factors that could be sources of ivory that could be making these open markets still leading to illegal killing of elephants in the source countries. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Kenya. I have Zimbabwe followed by the United Arab Emirates. Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, thank you for the time. Zimbabwe accepts that the convention looks mainly at international trade, and therefore we are of the position that CITES should stick to the mandate of regulating international trade and leave the domestic trade to the sovereignty of the nations whose purview is to make sure that they sustainably use their own resources. Notwithstanding the above, Zimbabwe accepts and stands by the Secretariat's recommendation decision 19DD so that there can be proper checks and balances to avoid the nexus of illegal ivory trade. And in the absence of a causal link between illegal trade and poaching, it is unjustified to recommend closure of domestic markets. As Zimbabwe, we therefore reject the adoption of its amendments and decision 19BB and 19CC as suggested by the proponents. I so submit.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. United Arab Emirates followed by Namibia.
Thank you, Chair.
The UAE would like to thank the countries for the proposed presented document. We would like to reiterate the UAE long-standing position to support efforts in wildlife conservation and combating the illegal trade of wildlife. The UAE is devoted to combat the illegal trade of ivory, and we commend the efforts of all parties for their role to end the illegal trade in ivory. We believe, however, that all approaches and decisions that we take here need to tackle the issue of combating the illegal trade in endangered species and their derivatives, and not directed towards the legal trade, which is regulated by national laws and legislations of countries, so the convention could be better implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, United Arab Emirates. Namibia, followed by Mexico. Namibia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Namibia thanks the Secretariat for preparing document 66.1 and would also like to thank the proponents of document 66.3. Namibia is fully committed to the fight against poaching and illegal trade, which has resulted in the reduction of poaching of elephants in Namibia. However, we believe that the issue of domestic markets must be dealt with at national levels, as long as those domestic markets are not contributing to illegal trade and poaching. And we therefore are not in support of the draft decisions contained in Annex 1 to document 66.3. Regarding document 66.1, Namibia supports the renewal of decisions 18.117 to 18.119. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Namibia. Mexico, followed by Burkina Faso.
Gracias, señora presidenta. México entiende y comparte la preocupación sobre el comercio de marfil. De hecho, en México la comercialización, exportación, importación y reexportación de marfil están prohibidas de conformidad con nuestra legislación nacional. No obstante, México quiere recordar que el cierre de mercados nacionales de marfil no es una atribución de las CITES. La propuesta abre la puerta para intervenir en la política interna de las partes, lo cual va en contra de los convenios internacionales. La independencia de cada parte debe respetarse. Además, consideramos que la solución ante los problemas de comercio ilegal se encuentra en una mejor cooperación internacional, que debe considerar que los países de tránsito y de destino de marfil refuercen sus medidas de control y que se les otorguen apoyo técnico, intercambio de información científica y estratégica, tecnologías, entre otros. También recordamos que existen foros especializados para atender las cuestiones de comercio ilegal, como lo es la Interpol, la UNODC, el Consorcio contra los Delitos, etc. En virtud de lo anterior, México rechaza las decisiones que se están proponiendo en el documento 66.3 y solicita considerar la adopción de las decisiones del documento 66.1. Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Mexico. Burkina Faso, followed by my final speaker, Saudi Arabia. Burkina Faso, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Burkina Faso aurait dû prendre la parole en première position pour introduire le document. Et c'est ce que nous allons faire à présent. Et le Burkina Faso prend la parole au nom des auteurs du document 66.3. Et certains de ces co-auteurs ont déjà soutenu le document. Il s'agit du Gabon, du Nigeria, du Mali, du Bénin, du Sénégal et du Togo. Le Burkina Faso souhaite également attirer l'attention des parties sur le fait que nous avons soumis un document d'information à ce sujet une semaine avant le début de la COP et qui n'a pas été mis en ligne, qui n'a été mis en ligne que très tardivement, c'est-à-dire hier seulement. Il s'agit du document d'information 82. Madame la Présidente, les populations d'éléphants constituent un important patrimoine pour les différents États de l'ère de répartition de ce pachyderme. Cependant, les marchés nationaux légaux de l'ivoire continuent de mettre en péril la protection des éléphants. Ils créent des marchés gris pour blanchir l'ivoire, compliquent la surveillance et l'application de la loi, sèment la confusion chez les consommateurs. stimule la demande et sape l'efficacité d'autres fermetures de marché. En 2016, à la COP17, la résolution CONF 1010 a été modifiée pour recommander la fermeture en toute urgence des marchés nationaux d'ivoire qui contribuent au braconnage et au commerce illégal. Pour ce faire, de nombreux pays ont fermé leurs marchés de l'ivoire. Toutefois, certains marchés d'ivoire restent ouverts et menacent tant les éléphants que la mise en œuvre de la Convention. Le plus grand de ces marchés est celui du Japon. Lors de la SC74, le comité permanent a invité la conférence des parties à renouveler les décisions 1817 à 1819 prises à la COP18 à ce sujet. Par ailleurs, lors de la réunion du comité, l'Union européenne a demandé de mandater le groupe consultatif technique ETIS pour qu'il prépare une analyse des saisies d'ivoire liées aux parties ayant des marchés intérieurs légaux et d'inclure cette analyse dans les rapports ETIS. Cette analyse est particulièrement importante pour déterminer l'origine des saisies et donc pour savoir si un marché national contribue ou non au commerce illicite. Elle est aisément réalisable et à moindre coût et fera toute la différence pour déterminer quelles mesures doivent encore être prises pour lutter contre le trafic de l'ivoire. Le Burkina Faso reprend cette excellente suggestion de l'Union européenne dans le document proposé et recommande par ailleurs la fermeture du marché national du Japon. Le Burkina Faso et les autres co-auteurs vous prient donc de soutenir les recommandations contenues dans ce document. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. And finally, Saudi Arabia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to document 66.3 for implementing aspects for resolution CONF 10.10, Rev COP18 on the closure of domestic ivory markets. We believe in the importance of preventing illegal trade of wildlife. Saudi Arabia supports efforts in wildlife conservation and combating illegal trade of wildlife, and congratulates parties for their regulation of national laws which aim to sustainably use of wildlife. Saudi Arabia supports African elephant origin countries on their concern to stop illegal trade in ivory and the progress to close illegal trade in local markets. Even though Saudi Arabia does not have a domestic market or demand for ivory, at the same time, we support parties' willingness to regulate domestic ivory markets, which positively and indirectly impacts conservation on the species in origin countries, as well as reflect directly on countries who regulate and control trade in endangered species of wildlife by national laws too. Finally, we recognize that the importance of this matter and strongly support implementation of efforts to address the illegal international trade in ivory, while supporting efforts by parties to regulate illegal trade via national laws and legislations so the convention could be better implemented. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. So that concludes my party list. I think we are starting to come to a landing here. I would like to open the floor to observers. Just a few observers. I have 4 observers. I will take the 4 observers on my list in the order that they've popped up. So I will take traffic. Traffic, you have the floor.
Traffic notes the draft decision directing the Secretariat to engage Mike ETIS Stag and Traffic in an analysis of ivory seizures connected to each party with legal domestic market for commercial trade in ivory, and to include the analysis in the ETIS report to the Standing Committee. Traffic suggests that it should be clearly defined which parties with legal domestic trade markets are to be considered, and we stress the need to clarify the specific objectives of the analysis, its terms of reference, and to engage with the Mike ETIS tag to determine how ETIS data should be used to ensure the proposed analysis meets the parties' expectations and needs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Traffic. I have Japan, tiger, elephant. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This statement is provided on behalf of 24 observer organizations, including Japan Tiger and Elephant Fund and Environmental Investigation Agency. We support interventions by Nigeria, Mali, Benin, Gabon, Senegal, and Burkina Faso. As long as parties have open domestic market, they must be held accountable and report on the measures they are taking to ensure their market is not contributing to poaching or illegal trade. We therefore urge all parties to support the original draft decisions included in Annex 1 of CoP19, Doc 66.3. JTEF's recent report contained in the annex to Inf 82 presents the result of an analysis of 45 Chinese court cases involving ivory, sourced from Japan. It found that nearly half of the cases involved organized criminal groups. As long as Japan's ivory market remains open, transnational organized criminals will continue to view Japan as an easy source of ivory. Japan has implemented no new legislative, regulatory, or enforcement measures to address illegal ivory trade since COP18. Indeed, the measures taken by Japan presented in Inf 47 and 48 are merely routine enforcement work that was initiated before COP18 and some voluntary awareness activities by the private businesses. We need to achieve a tangible result at this COP. Japan's domestic legal market is clearly contributing to illegal international trade in ivory. We urge the Conference of the Parties to act on the recommendation in Resolution Conf 1010 Rev COP18, paragraph 3, adopted 6 years ago at COP17, that all parties and no parties with a legal domestic market for ivory that is contributing to poaching or illegal trade should close those markets as a matter of urgency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And then I have IWMC followed by SA Taxidermy Tannery. IWMC, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As this is the first time we are taking the floor, we would like to thank the Government of Panama for hosting this meeting and to congratulate you, Madam Chair, for having been nominated to lead this committee, and we would like to express our gratitude for your skills in steering it well. I'm speaking on behalf of IWMC World Conservation Trust and several other organizations, the list of which will be provided to the Secretariat. For several years now, certain parties have been working in collaboration with large international anti-wildlife use NGOs to close down legal ivory trade in domestic markets. Domestic markets in any commodity, whether it be from wildlife, electronics, or whatever, is a national issue which does not fall under the purview of any international treaty, convention, or agreement. It is a sovereignty issue when an international convention begins to interfere in national economies and the desires and cultural practices and traditions of its citizens. The rationale has been that if a national ivory market contributes to poaching or illegal trade, it poses a threat to elephants. If it poses a threat to elephants, then it should close, causing the loss of livelihoods of untold numbers of people in the ivory industry of a sovereign nation and depriving a populace of a desired product. Essentially, it is valuing elephants as being of more importance than people. We know from ETIS reports and other sources that the main markets for illegal ivory are countries with closed domestic ivory trade. Closure of the markets was ineffective in stopping illegal trade of ivory. In addition, there are dozens of cases
that can be thought of in which a legal product can be said to motivate illegal trade. One thinks of counterfeit luxury goods. Is Gucci told to close down because a dodgy factory somewhere exports Gucci knockoffs? Cigarettes are commonly smuggled by organized crime to avoid taxes. Are cigarettes banned and manufacturers told to close their factories? I could go on. Just because a legal product leads to illegal trade of its product should not require the legal product to be prohibited. If any country wishes to produce a product legal within its frontiers and sell it domestically, it should not be pressured by an international convention as exemplified in Decision 18.11 Rev CoP19 and Draft Decision 19.AA in Document 66.3. Draft Decisions 19.cc and 19.dd in Document 66.3 are the legitimate business of CITES and are welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, IWMC. Finally, SA Taxidermy Tannery. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am making this intervention on behalf of the South African Taxidermy.
Technicians, can you get, thank you.
As well as SUCO and several other organizations, representing 100,000 businesses and individuals, supporting over 400,000 livelihoods. The domestic ivory market is a national issue and not in line with the mandate of CITES. That is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. The elephants' populations in Southern Africa are not endangered. There are currently programs underway in Southern Africa to introduce contraceptives to prevent the elephant population from expanding. Elephant populations in Southern Africa range states are destroying their biodiversity on a massive scale. There seems to be one species has preference over the others. Therefore, we do not support 66.3. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And with that, I think we have we've landed somewhere, I think, here. I'm going to take just one moment because I think it's reasonably clear to me where we should go, and I'll come back to you. Thank you, everyone. So thank you, everyone, for this debate. I really appreciate your focused interventions and your brief interventions and the clarity that you've given me. So I think I am prepared to propose a way forward with these two documents. So referring to document CoP19, document 66.1, and I will come back and sum up the entire document, but Annex 1, as we've been discussing here, I think that we, in general, are here agreement to maintain Decision 18.117, Rev CoP19, Decision 18.118 and Decision 18.119, Rev CoP19. Turning to document CoP19, document 66.3, I didn't hear support for the adoption, for the agreement to adopt the new decisions 19AA, 19BB or 19CC. I do also note some concern in those discussions about the value of looking at other information sources. So in regards to those two sets of decisions, my conclusion based on our discussions is that we are adopting the draft we are agreeing to the draft decisions in document 66.1 Annex 1, and we are not agreeing to the decisions 19AA, 19BB and 19CC in document 66.3. I then want to turn to document 66.3, new decision 19DD. I heard some support for the decision as proposed from the UK and from South Africa. I heard opposition to the decision from Japan. And then I heard several parties expressing opposition as drafted but support for the Secretariat's amended version of 19DD, which is on page 7 in their comments. And the Secretariat's amendments go to the matter requiring external funding and a feasibility analysis. And so my feeling from our discussions is that the Secretariat's amended version of this decision might be an acceptable compromise to those parties concerned. I do see Japan asking for the floor, so Japan, I will give you the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, Japan reiterates the importance of the eradication of illegal international trade and poaching. But we do think that the original proposal of 19DD does not have meaning. But if we agree, we are consent if we based on the suggestion of the Secretariat. But in addition of the amendment proposal by the Secretariat, we would like to add one sub-paragraph on 19.DD. It is very important that parties are able to verify the result of the analysis to ensure transparency and quality of the analysis. Japan would like to add the sentences that enable parties to assess the data and analysis. Our proposal of the amendment is based on the proposal by the Secretariat. First, move the term "the Secretariat shall" to the head of the 19DD, and put the title subparagraph A to the rest of the sentence. Then insert the following sentence as subparagraph B. Ensure that parties have access to any data used in its analysis, including but not limited to statistical methodology, underlying code, and any supporting documentation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Japan. We have that. I'm reluctant to open another large discussion on this. I would like reflections on my suggestion about the Secretariat's amended version and Japan's addition, because I think that's where we're working now. So I see Benin asking for the floor. I'm not going to take a whole lot of parties with long interventions. I'm going to take just reflections on those two elements. So please be prepared when I give you the floor to reflect upon those two things. Otherwise, I'm afraid I will have to interrupt you. So Benin, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Donc je vais être bref. Le Bénin soutient donc la décision 19DD telle que mentionnée dans le document 66.3 et non l'amendement apporté par le Secrétariat. Merci.
Thank you, Benin. Zambia.
Thank you, Chair. Zambia would like to agree with the amendments which are suggested by the Secretariat.
Thank you. These are the types of interventions I am seeking. Bolivia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Bolivia apoya la enmienda de Japón.
Thank you, Bolivia. Burkina Faso.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Le Burkina Faso voudrait soutenir l'amendement apporté de 19DD dans le document et non la proposition portée par le secrétariat. Pendant que j'ai le micro, je profite parce que nous parlons des éléphants et pas souvent d'ivoire. Et nous nous insurgeons contre certains propos qui tendent à faire croire, à nous dire qu'il ne s'agit pas du mandat de notre convention de s'occuper des marchés intérieurs d'ivoire. Et nous savons bien que ceux qui détiennent beaucoup d'ivoire savent que tout leur ivoire ne provient pas souvent de sources, j'allais dire, légales. Donc dans ces conditions aussi, c'est une insuffisance de la CITES. Cette question doit être vraiment analysée avec beaucoup de sérieux parce qu'il est inadmissible que des stocks d'ivoire se retrouvent dans des pays qui n'ont pas d'éléphants et que ces parties pensent que c'est un droit d'en posséder et d'en faire le commerce tout en sachant qu'il y a un effet négatif sur la conservation de l'espèce. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. So on the Secretariat's amendments and Japan's amendments, I'm taking a few more comments. Botswana followed by Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana would be amenable to go with the amendments as suggested by the Secretariat and the amendments proposed by Japan. Thank you.
Thank you, Botswana. That's very clear. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, first, you did indicate that there was no support on document 66.3, but I think from our standpoint, there was a general support on some support, significant actually, on that document. But on the specific question, we'll, on 19.DD, we'll support the retention as it is without subjecting it to external funding as proposed by the Secretariat. So we are not supporting the amendments, and also I think without written submission by Japan, I think is done significant write-up. We are unable to support what they are proposing. I don't even know what they are proposing.
I would be happy to read, thank you, Kenya. I would be happy to read Japan's amendment. I'm closing my list, by the way. I already have a number of parties, and I would appreciate your responses being directed to these comments. I will read Japan's amendments as I quote it. Japan will let me know if I have it wrong. So Japan is suggesting that there is a chapeau added, which says the Secretariat shall, and then we would carry on with the rest of the paragraph with the Secretariat shall removed. And then they're proposing a subparagraph B that says, ensure that parties have access to any data used in its analysis, including but not limited to statistical methodology, underlying code, and any supporting information. So I will take reflections on the Secretariat's amendments with Japan's amendments from Mali, followed by South Africa. Mali, you have the floor.
Merci bien, Madame la Présidente. Et comme vous l'avez entendu, les différents intervenants qui ont essayé de développer des philosophies aussi concrètes relatives à ce point, le Mali qui a soutenu justement les autres États qui ont élaboré ce document. Et nous sommes aussi un pays de l'état de répartition des éléphants. Donc, dans ce cas, alors le Mali soutient l'adoption de la décision 19DD dans le document 63 et rejette au fait ce que propose le Japon. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mali. South Africa, followed by Gabon.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa will accept the amendment from the Secretariat with the amendment by Japan. Thank you.
Thank you, South Africa. Gabon, followed by Niger. Gabon, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Le Gabon réitère à nouveau l'urgence d'entreprendre une analyse des saisies d'ivoire impliquant les pays qui n'ont pas fermé leur marché intérieur au commerce de l'ivoire. Par conséquent, nous soutenons l'adoption de la décision 19.dd à l'annexe 1 du document COP19 DOC 66.3 sans les modifications proposées par le secrétariat qui ne feraient que retarder la mise en œuvre. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Gabon. I'll see Nigeria, followed by Namibia and then Cambodia, and those are my parties. So Niger, you have the floor.
Et merci, Madame la Présidente. Partant de la logique de la conservation de cette espèce emblématique et dont nous avons reçu beaucoup d'appui à l'égard des partenaires techniques et financiers, et je soutiens fermement la proposition initiale de nos États, à savoir tel que précisé par le Bénin, le Burkina Faso et les autres collègues, en tout cas la proposition initiale, et rejette du coup les propositions d'amendement proposées par le secrétariat et le Japon. Merci.
Thank you, Niger. Namibia, followed by Cambodia. Namibia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are in support of the amendments made by Japan. Thank you.
Thank you, Namibia and Cambodia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cambodia support the proposed amendment by Japan. Thank you.
Thank you, Cambodia. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your indulgence on going back around on this. It's clear we are still divergent. We don't have strong consensus on this. My feeling is that overall, noting that we've heard from a number of proponents for this paper supporting their original proposal, that we do have majority support, I say that hesitantly, we do have some support for the amended Decision 19DD as amended by the Secretariat and as further amended by Japan. So based on my reading of the room, I would propose that that is the way that we will move forward with this. I see European Union asking for the floor. European Union.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify the position of the EU and its 27 member states, we support the amended version from the Secretariat, but we do not support the additions made by Japan. We feel that the ETIS code and the statistical methodology and the data used is available, so there's no need to have this additional sentence added. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. Thank you, everyone. So with that clarification provided by the EU on behalf of their member states, it's my conclusion that the support is actually for the decision as amended by the Secretariat without the amendments proposed by Japan. So we have a number of parties who've spoken in favour of that. I am proposing that that would be the way forward. Technicians, can you clear the list, please? So I'll just repeat that my conclusion at this point is that there is support for 19DD as amended by the Secretariat, so the version that you will see on page 7 of document 66.3. I would like to suggest we can move forward with that as our conclusion. I see only one party asking for the floor, so I will give the one party asking for the floor at the moment the floor. I would like to wrap this up. We've been around a few times. Benin, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Et le Bénin prend acte de votre conclusion, mais tient quand même à relever que ici plusieurs partis se sont vraiment opposés également aux modifications apportées par le secrétariat et voulaient bien s'en tenir donc à l'amendement initial. Voilà.
Thank you, Benin. Yes, I do note that several parties strongly oppose, and a number of those are proponents for this paper, so we have heard your views. It is just simply my conclusion that the majority of speakers are in support, in terms of a way forward on this document, of agreeing to document 19DD, decision 19DD, as amended by the Secretariat. Unless somebody would like to propose an alternate way forward that, based on all the discussions, we've all heard the same views. I'm doing the best with the information that you have given me. Do you see, Liberia, is your comment with an alternate way forward based on the discussions we've had?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe my comment will be the ultimate way forward, because my feeling is that many parties are supported the proponents, and then and then 19DD, and then you are coming up with the secretarial position. So the way forward, I think we should subject this document to a vote. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liberia. Does anyone who has requested the floor oppose the proposal by Liberia? I think we have a call for a vote from Liberia, and the rules of procedure are clear that if there's a call for a vote, then that is what we do. So I will give us all a few minutes. If you have to gather your people, scoot in from next door, get your cards in order. I will give you a minute or two. Technicians, I think we can clear the list, please. So where we are organising ourselves, and I will give us a few minutes. Liberia, just to confirm, your proposal for a vote is to vote on whether to adopt Decision 19DD as written in Document 66.3 Annex 1, the original decision in Document 66.3, whether to adopt it. Correct. All right, Liberia is nodding at me, so that is what we were considering, the original 19DD. Press my button. So voting procedures, those who were here yesterday will know that we need everyone who's not a party representative out of the party area and everybody who is a party representative seated, please. We need media and anyone with cameras to the rear of the room or inside the media area, please. Need everyone who wishes to vote with their voting cards in their machines. Parties, if you're in the room, you're welcome to take your seats, please. Anyone who's a party representative is welcome to take their seats. Once I call the 40 seconds, I need everyone to stand still. Anyone who's a party representative in the room, please take your seats. I see some people at the door. Security, parties may enter. You can hear. Thank you. We're having some clarity from the Secretariat for the people waiting at the door. South Africa, would you like the floor while we're waiting? Thank you. South Africa, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chair. I would just like to request that you repeat what we are voting for, so we are clear what we're voting for, yes or no. Thanks, Chair.
I certainly will. South Africa, European Union, you're also requesting the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We have a point of order. Apparently, some of the EU member states are not being let into the room.
Thank you, European Union. The Secretary General has approached the back of the room to make sure that parties who are there can get in.
Is it automatic?
Thank you, everyone. We'll clarify with security about the arrangements. The rule is that once I start the 40 seconds voting, no one is allowed to enter, but of course, parties are welcome to enter when I call for a vote. So it looks like most people in the room are comfortably in their seats, so I am going to begin. So as South Africa has requested, I will repeat what we are voting on. Liberia has called for a vote on the adoption of draft decision 19DD directed to the Secretariat as outlined in CoP19 document 66.3 Annex 1. So that is the original language proposed by the proponents on document 66.3. If you vote yes, you wish for this decision, for us to agree to this decision. If you vote no, you do not wish for the committee to agree to this decision. I hope that's clear. Burkina Faso, you're requesting the floor. Burkina Faso.
Je voulais dire que ce n'est pas clair pour moi. Merci.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. I will go again. So my proposal had been to consider agreeing to the Secretariat's amended Decision 19DD. Liberia has not agreed with me and has proposed an alternate way forward, that we vote on the original draft Decision 19DD contained in Annex 1 of document 66.3. So the original Decision 19DD that you and your co-proponents proposed, your original text, we are voting on whether or not to agree to accept that decision. If you vote yes, you want us to agree to that decision. If you vote no, you want us not to agree to that decision. So we're going back to the original text in the annex and making a decision on that. Okay, we will begin the voting procedure now, technicians. So this is a vote for agenda item 66.3. Sorry, I see the UK asking for the floor. UK?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just be absolutely clear that the inference then is that a vote no is the adoption of the Secretariat's version, or will there be a further vote on that, or does the whole decision fall? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. That's a helpful clarity. So the decision we are making is just on whether or not we wish to accept this decision. If this decision is not accepted, we will return to the conclusion that I had made and make a decision on that. So it is not an automatic acceptance of my proposal. Liberia has challenged me, as they're welcome to, and then we will come back to the proposal I had put forward, and then we will see how we feel about that. So we're just focusing yes, no on the adoption of the decision as outlined in Annex 1. Thank you, UK. Israel, you have the floor.
Would the chair kindly read the text of the decision that we're voting on?
You would like the text? Sure. So I'm reading from the final paragraph on page 8 of Annex 1 of 66.3. It is the decision directed to the Secretariat, which reads 19DD. The Secretariat shall engage the MIC and ETIS Technical Advisory Group and Traffic in an analysis of ivory seizures connected to each party with a legal domestic market for commercial trade in ivory, and include the analysis in the ETIS report to the Standing Committee at its 77th and 78th meetings and to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. I would like to go to the vote that I've called, but Kenya, you're requesting the floor.
Madam Chair, this is just a procedural request. Do we start by voting for the amendments or for the original text?
We are voting for the original text. The amendments are my proposal, which has been challenged by Liberia, so we are back to the original text. That is what we are voting on. I'm going to take one more intervention because I've already called a vote. Antigua and Barbuda, do you have a point to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some clarity. Israel has just asked for the text for what we're voting on. I'd like to make a comparison. So I'm asking for the text as amended by the Secretariat so that I can weigh both before I vote.
Thank you, Antigua and Barbuda. Both are included in document 66.3. It is the decision 19DD on page 8, and the Secretariat has provided their amended version on page 7 of document 66.3. So you have them before you. I will propose to move on with the vote that I've called. So I'll start again. This is a vote on document CoP19 66.3. The voting type is by normal vote. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the individual member states. Since this is a vote on a substantive matter, the decision will be adopted by a 2/3 majority.
We're ready, Chair.
Thank you, technicians. Parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. Forty seconds are up. The ballot's now closed. Technicians, please show the result on the main screen. So this is the result of the vote. We have 39 votes yes, 58 votes no, and 5 abstentions. This means the vote is not adopted by a 2/3 majority. For decision 19DD is not adopted. We'll put this up just for a few seconds and then we will show you your individual votes. Please show the individual votes of the parties on the screen now. Thank you, everyone. I hope you've had time to see your individual votes. They will, of course, be recorded in the summary record. So, as I indicated when the UK sought for clarity, we'll now return to my conclusion. That it's my view, based on our discussions, that the committee would accept the Secretariat's amended Decision 19DD as proposed by the Secretariat. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the spirit of the compromise, we accept Madam Chair's decision to adopt 19DD amended by Secretariat. But Japan sincerely hopes that transparency will be ensured if new analysis to be conducted as suggested in the amendment 19.DD. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Japan, and thank you for your compromise. I think with that, we can move on. I will come back, as I promised, we have our conclusion there on document 66.3. I did promise to come back to document 66.1, just run through all of our decisions for clarity and so that we have it all clear on the record. And so we are invited to note the information contained in document CoP19 66.1. So I conclude that we note it. I conclude that we recommend that that we agree to the decisions outlined in Annex 1, that we agree to the decisions outlined in Annex 2 with the amendment proposed by the Secretariat, that we agree to the adoption of the decisions in Annex 3 with the amendments that I outlined earlier, which go to the redirection of the decisions to parties rather than Asian elephant range states, that include in Decision 19AA the amendment from Sri Lanka to include collaboration with range states and other stakeholders, that include the amendment from the UK to delete the word minimum from 19AAB. I hope it's clear. I've run through these earlier, but I'm just for the sake of the record. That includes in 19AA the consequential amendment to 19AA paragraph A, which requests a report from parties rather than just Asian range states. That we agree to the decisions in Annex 4, and that we agree to delete decisions 18.120, 18.121, 18.227, 18.182, and 18.183. Thank you, parties. Okay, we will move on to CoP19, document 66.7. I would at least like to have this introduced before we break for lunch so that we can come back and discuss this further. So CoP19, document 66.7, review of the National Ivory Action Plan process. This document has been submitted by Malawi, Senegal, and the United States of America. I'd like to invite one of the proponents. I see Malawi asking for the floor. Malawi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Since this is the first time that Malawi has taken the floor, I'd like to thank the people and the government of the Republic of Panama for the warm hospitality granted to the Malawi delegation and hard work in preparations for this 19th meeting of the Conference of Parties by the CITES Secretariat. We also congratulate you on your appointment as chair of the committee. Further, I thank you for the opportunity to introduce document CoP19 Doc 66.7 on the review of the National Ivory Action Plan process. The National Ivory Action process was launched in 2013 in response to the elephant poaching crisis. The need to address ivory trafficking was an urgent matter of concern, and the then existing CITES recommendations were proving ineffective in controlling the illegal killing of elephants and the illegal ivory trade. Madam Chair, as an African elephant range state and party formerly in the NIAP process, we strongly support the aims on the process. However, in the agency to address the poaching and illegal ivory trade crisis, the need for a provision requiring an assessment of the program's effectiveness was overlooked. Consequently, the NIAP process has never been systematically evaluated to identify the gaps in the process that would reduce its effectiveness. Currently, major discrepancies exist for how often parties under the NIAP process are expected to update their action plan. Non-reporting and red submission of reports that miss the deadline for consideration at standing committee meetings has also been an issue. Furthermore, we believe that there is need for better alignment between compliance procedures under NIAP and other Article 13 processes, as well as better alignment between reporting requirements under NIAP and those of the annual illegal trade report, the elephant trade information systems, and stockpile reporting. Without a defined evaluation process built into the NIAP guidelines, a review must be initiated by a separate decision of the Conference of the Parties. The proposal for this review contained in our document, subject to external funding, would direct the Secretariat in consultation with the Standing Committee to contract a consultant to conduct a review of NIAP and its associated guidelines. The review would be presented to the Standing Committee, which would determine whether additional evaluation is required and would prepare a report recommending updates to the NIAP process for consideration of the Conference of the Parties at its 20th meeting. In order to ensure that the review of the NIAP process results in strong recommendations and needed improvement to the process, we also recommend an additional instruction in draft decision 19.cc directing the Standing Committee to develop clear terms of reference to guide the recruitment of an external consultant and the review of the NIAP process, drawing from the considerations raised in paragraph 7. We acknowledge that this additional instruction may result in changes to the timeline contemplated in the draft decisions in the document, and so would recommend amending the timeline in the draft decisions as appropriate. Madam Chair, in conclusion, we agree with the Secretariat's suggested amendments with expected review outputs contained in paragraphs A1 and A2, namely considerations of the need for a systematic and regular review of the NIAP process to ensure that it remains up to date with future developments and development of recommendations to facilitate alignment of the NIAP process with existing compliance measures, and we support the Secretariat's suggested amendments to these two paragraphs. We appreciate your consideration and welcome your support in calling for this review. Thank you, Madam Chair. I submit.
Thank you, Malawi. We have about 5 minutes left. I would like to take some interventions, but I would note that Malawi has indicated that the proponents are supportive of the Secretariat's amendments to Decision 19AA, paragraph A, little I, and little II, and paragraph B. So I would suggest that we begin our discussions reflecting upon that amendment in addition to decisions 19BB and 19CC from the proponents. So I have time for 3 interventions and I have 3 parties on my board, so please no one else adds you to the board. We will come back and I will reopen my list. So I will take Liberia, followed by Senegal, followed by the United States, and I would ask you to keep your interventions to 2 minutes so we can finish on time. Thank you. Liberia.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And also thank you for the crafter of this document and the presenter of Malawi. And even those who submitted the United States of America and the other proponents of this document. And we strongly support this as Liberia because looking back at the NIAP process that was created 10 years ago, we have noted that there have been no straightforward mechanism for the process for it to be reviewed regularly to ensure that it remains fit for purpose, for its real purpose. So a review will provide a scope for revision of the guidelines to incorporate a mechanism for systematic review. So I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Liberia. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Sénégal, tout naturellement, en tant que pays co-auteur, soutient la proposition présentée par le Malawi. Et nous disons que l'élaboration des plans d'action nationaux pour l'Ivoire participe d'une meilleure gestion et d'une meilleure mise en œuvre des dispositions prises au niveau de la CITES. C'est en ce sens que les amendements qui sont introduits, comme l'a dit le collègue du Malawi dans sa conclusion, le Sénégal demande aux partis vraiment de soutenir ce document. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. United States of America.
Thank you, Chair. The United States has consistently supported and has put much into its efforts for all to tackle the threat of illegal ivory trade and its negative effect on efforts to conserve elephants. As a co-sponsor of this document, we strongly support the proposed decisions and the additional draft decision directed to the Standing Committee, which was introduced by Malawi. The NIAP process was created in response to the elephant poaching crisis and the need to address ivory trafficking as an urgent matter of concern when then existing CITES recommendations were having little impact on controlling elephant poaching and the illegal ivory trade. We have been a supporter of the NIAP process from its beginning and continue to strongly support its aims. However, in the urgency to address the problem, the need for a provision requiring an assessment of the program's effectiveness was overlooked, and we are calling for that review now in order to identify gaps and strengthen the process to ensure that it continues to meet its aims. We appreciate and commend the Secretariat and all of their diligent work supporting the NIAP process over the last decade and congratulate the parties that have accomplished and are implementing their NIAPs. The recommendation in the document to provide a consultancy with external funds is intended to support the Secretariat and the parties in these important efforts. Therefore, we do not support the Secretariat's recommendation in paragraph 19AA Chapeau to conduct the review itself and instead support the original recommendations in the document for an independent review. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, United States. I have 2 more minutes. Malaysia, can you do your intervention within 2 minutes? If so, I will give you the floor.
Madam Chair, Malaysia welcomes the document submitted by Malawi, Senegal, and the United States of America on the review of the National Ivory Action Plan process. NIAP has been a useful tool for Malaysia to take steps to curb trafficking of ivory exploited in our country. Through NIAP, we have strengthened our engagement with the enforcement agencies, established a new Wildlife Crime Bureau within our Royal Malaysian Police, and have achieved significant improvements during the evaluation of SC74, where Malaysia will be considered to exit the NIAP process at the next SC77. With regard to document 66.7, Malaysia fully supports the comments of the secretariats, in particular the editorial changes made to the proposed draft decision 19.AA. Malaysia believes that the Secretariat is the most appropriate party to evaluate the NIAP process and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Malaysia. We will leave it there for our morning session. I did want to let parties know that it's my intention after lunch to come to summary records. We have had 3 summary records published for at least one session. So I would propose to review CoP19 Committee 2 Rec 1, CoP19 Committee 2 Rec 2, and CoP19 Committee 2 Rec 3 first thing after the lunch break before we return to our discussion on this item. Don't think we don't have any other housekeeping? No. All right, enjoy your lunch breaks. We'll see you back here at 1:45.